Pilot Podcasts. Kevin Knight jumped over the top rope, cracked the AEW World Champion in the skull with a title belt, and then stood there holding both titles in the air while the go-home show faded to black. That is how AEW sent everyone into Redemption Weekend. Today, we are breaking down every single thing that happened on the July 22nd Dynamite from Nashville, what it all means, and we are making predictions for all 10 matches at AEW Redemption this Sunday at the Bell Center in Montreal. By the end of this episode, you will know exactly what to watch for, who we think walks out champion, and why this go-home show was genuinely one of the more loaded Dynamites in recent memory. My co-host has been all over this card all week, so let's get right into it.
Nashville delivered. Like, across the board. Every single segment on that show got graded A or A+ by the folks covering it live. And that almost never happens on a go-home show where you're mostly just doing promos and setting tables.
Right, and it opened with a title match, which already tells you AEW was not playing around.
Kevin Knight defending the TNT Championship against Darby Allin to open the show. That match started before the bell even rang. Darby just dove through the ropes onto Knight at ringside, and they brawled all over the Pinnacle before it was officially a match.
And Darby ended up bleeding near his eye during that match, right?
Yeah, Knight catapulted Darby face first into the ring steps and opened him up, and then just kept going after the cut. Classic heel stuff. Darby fought back with 2 code reds, including one on the floor, but then the referee got bumped and Knight grabbed the TNT title belt.
And that's how he won.
Knight blasted Darby with the belt, hung him upside down in the corner, hit a coast-to-coast, and then the UFO splash for the pin. That was his record 10th successful TNT Championship defense. And then Kyle Fletcher's music hit immediately after.
Which is where things got really interesting for the Don Callis family storyline.
So the entire Don Callis family comes out, Renee Paquette interviews them, and Knight starts gloating that he won the TNT title without any help from the family. Fletcher takes exception to that, and then announces that no Don Callis family members will be allowed at ringside for his International Championship defense against Bandido at Redemption. And then the two of them shoved each other.
A shove between 2 guys on the same team 4 days before a pay-per-view. That is not subtle.
Not subtle at all. And then it got confirmed almost immediately in the next match. Fletcher teamed with Kazuchika Okada against Brody King and Brodido, and Okada accidentally hit Fletcher with the Rainmaker, which allowed Bandido to hit the 21 Plex on Fletcher for the pin.
So Bandido pinned the international champion 4 days before their title match.
Pinned him clean, yeah. And Fletcher was furious at Okada afterward. Okada backed up the ramp looking apologetic. Then Don Callis tried to send Mark Davis out to attack Brodido, but Andrade El Idolo ran out and backed Davis down, which is a nice little preview of their national championship match at Redemption too.
So in one segment, you got the setup for 2 separate Redemption matches. That's efficient storytelling.
And then you had the Thekla and Willow Nightingale face-to-face, which Mick Foley moderated. That segment was something else.
Okay, I have to ask, why Mick Foley? That's a specific choice.
It actually made a lot of sense in context. Foley introduced himself as someone who has been beaten up and smiled through it anyway, and he pointed out that Willow and Thekla have both done the same thing. And Thekla's whole character is this toxic persona, where she calls herself Thekla 2 Belts. She's holding both the AEW Women's World title and a Stardom title. So having Foley there as this legend who embodies toughness gave the segment real weight.
And then Thekla told Mick Foley to shut the hell up.
Which is when Willow called her out for disrespecting a legend. The whole thing escalated. Thekla hit Willow with the mic, and then Willow pounced her clean out of the ring to end the segment. The crowd loved it.
And there's also a Montreal connection worth mentioning here. The Bell Center, that city has a very specific history with pro wrestling moments that don't go the way people expect.
Yeah, Montreal is the city of the screw job. 1997, Survivor Series, Bret Hart. So whenever a big wrestling show goes to Montreal, there's always this undercurrent of, okay, who's getting double-crossed tonight? And with the Don Callis family already fracturing, that energy feels very relevant this weekend.
That's a great point. Okay, let's get into the rest of the go-home show, and then we'll run the predictions. Jay White and Clark Connors.
Jay White won that match, choked Connors out with a guillotine. But the real story was after. Connors tried to attack White, White hit the Blade Runner, and then David Finlay ran in and laid White out with a Shillelagh. The rest of the Bang Bang Gang came out and chased Finlay and Connors off. And then backstage, Juice Robinson officially challenged the Dogs to a double chain match at Redemption.
So that match got made on the Go Home show itself.
Right, and Tony Khan confirmed it on social media after the show. The double chain match is now official. Jay White and Juice Robinson versus David Finlay and Clark Connors.
And then the women's tag titles match, Divine Dominion versus Sisters of Sin in a no DQ match.
That was a wild one. Kendo sticks, a table on the stage, Sky Blue getting busted open from a screwdriver shot accidentally from her own partner Julia Hart. Bane eventually chokeslammed Blue through the table on the outside, and then Divine Dominion hit their finish from Heaven to Hell on Hart to retain. Lena Cross and Megan Bane are still your Women's World Tag Team Champions.
And then the main event, Omega, Ospreay, and Moxley against the Don Callis family trio.
So this was the Dream Team Trios match. Kenny Omega teaming with Death Riders members Will Ospreay and Jon Moxley against Brian Cage, Hechicero, and Jake Doyle. And even in the match itself, there were little tension spots. Ospreay refusing to let Omega tag him, Omega accidentally hitting Moxley with a knee. They won when Ospreay hit the hidden blade and Omega hit the V-trigger, but the real story was what happened after.
The post-match chaos.
Omega and Moxley went face-to-face after the match. Ospreay tried to break it up, Omega pushed him away. The Young Bucks came out, they're facing Moxley and Ospreay at Redemption, and a full brawl broke out. And then Kevin Knight jumped over the top rope and cracked Omega with the AEW title belt. Knight stood there holding both the TNT title and the AEW title in the air. That was the last image of the Go Home show.
That is a statement. Okay, let's get into predictions. 10 matches. Let's start at the top. Kenny Omega defending the AEW World Championship against Kevin Knight.
So the context here is important. According to the Wikipedia page for Redemption, Omega won the AEW World Championship at Dynamite Beach Break by defeating MJF, and that was described as his last chance to capture the title. So he's a relatively new champion. Knight challenged him on the July 15th Dynamite, wanting to become a double champion since he already holds the TNT title.
And Knight just spent the entire Go Home show looking like the most dangerous person in the building.
He really did. But I think Omega retains. The analysts at Smark Out Moment called it Omega retains over Knight in what they expect to be a good match. The narrative of Knight as this ascending heel who's willing to cheat his way to the top is more valuable as a long-term story than having him win the title here. Omega just won it. He's not dropping it 4 days later.
Prediction, Omega retains. What about Thekla versus Willow Nightingale for the Women's World Championship?
This is the most genuinely uncertain match on the card. Smark Out Moment gave it a very good chance of a title change. They said there's a very good chance Willow wins, and pointed to a potential match between Willow and Mercedes Moné at All In as a strong possibility. But they also floated the idea that Thekla retains, and they build toward a triple threat with Thekla, Willow, and Mercedes at All In.
So it could go either way.
It really could. Willow won a Casino Gauntlet match on July 8th to earn this shot after returning from a shoulder injury. The Go Home segment was electric. I'm going to lean toward Willow winning the title. The story is right, the crowd is behind her, and having her go into All In as champion to face Mercedes feels like the bigger match.
Prediction, Willow Nightingale wins the Women's World Championship. Okay, Mark Davis versus Andrade El Idolo for the National Championship.
Andrade wins this one. Smark Out Moment said they'd be incredibly shocked if Andrade doesn't win. Andrade earned this shot by beating Jake Doyle on the July 15th Dynamite. And we saw on the Go Home show that Andrade ran out to make the save for Brodido when Don Callis tried to send Davis after them. That's a babyface moment. Andrade is positioned to win.
Prediction, Andrade El Idolo wins the National Championship. Kyle Fletcher versus Bandito for the International Championship, and everyone is banned from ringside.
Fletcher announced that ban himself on the Go Home show, and Bandito just pinned Fletcher in the tag match. The momentum is with Bandito, but I think Fletcher retains here. Smark Out Moment predicted Fletcher retains, and the analysts at the Big Lead also went with Fletcher. The Okada tension and the Don Callis family fracture gives Fletcher a longer story to tell. Bandito winning the title here might short-circuit that.
Even though Bandito just beat him?
That's the thing about Go Home show results. They often protect the challenger to make the match feel competitive, not necessarily to telegraph the outcome. Fletcher winning clean in a one-on-one match with no interference, after all the chaos of the family drama, could actually be a strong character moment for him.
Fair point. Prediction, Kyle Fletcher retains the International Championship. What about the six-way ladder match to determine the number one contender for that same title?
So, this match exists because Mystico was pulled from Redemption due to injuries he sustained at Arena Mexico. Tony Khan announced that on social media, Mystico was undefeated in AEW and had earned a shot, but couldn't be medically cleared. So instead, they're doing a six-way ladder match with Jack Perry, the Beast Mortos, Commander, Speedball Mike Bailey, and 2 qualifiers from Collision.
That's a tough break for Mystico.
It is, but the ladder match itself should be fun. The big lead went with Jack Perry to win, noting that Perry just re-signed with AEW and getting him a big pay-per-view win immediately makes sense. I agree with that. Perry winning the number one contendership is the right call.
Prediction, Jack Perry wins the ladder match. Chris Jericho versus Tommaso Ciampa, no holds barred.
Jericho is coming in as the Painmaker persona, which Ciampa's actions apparently triggered. Smark Out Moment was pretty blunt about this one. They said the Painmaker character doesn't resonate with them, and they hope Ciampa wins, but don't think he will. The big lead also went with Jericho. I'll go with Jericho winning the no-holds-barred match.
Prediction, Jericho wins. Cage and Cope, Adam Copeland and Christian Cage, defending the AEW World Tag Team Championships against the Death Riders, Claudio Castagnoli and Pac.
So, on the Go Home show, Castagnoli and Pac ambushed Cope and Cage backstage when they were about to cut a promo. Pac said they've bitten off more than they can chew and that the Death Riders will show what they're capable of on Sunday. That's a strong heel promo. But I think Cage and Cope retain. Smark Out Moment called it, champs retain, this is just killing time before a bigger story. The big lead also went with the champs.
Prediction, Cage and Cope retain the Tag Team Championships. Now the other Death Riders match, Jon Moxley and Will Ospreay versus the Young Bucks.
This one is interesting because the Young Bucks challenged Moxley and Ospreay on the July 18th Collision, and they accepted. And then on the Go Home show, the Bucks were literally in the middle of the post-match brawl. The tension between Omega, Moxley, and Ospreay is real. Omega accidentally hit Moxley during the trios match, and they went face-to-face after. Smark Out Moment said they wouldn't bet on Ospreay losing on this show. I'm going with Death Riders, Moxley and Ospreay win.
Prediction, Death Riders win. Hikaru Shida defending the TBS Championship against Maya World.
Smark Out Moment gave this about a 45% chance of a title change, which is actually pretty significant uncertainty. Their lean was that Shida retains and keeps building momentum as a heel. And we know from the Go Home show that Willow Nightingale and Maya World are teaming against Thekla and Shida on Collision this Saturday. So Maya World is being positioned as a credible challenger. But I'll go with Shida retaining.
Prediction, Hikaru Shida retains the TBS Championship. And finally, the double chain match, Bang Bang Gang, Jay White and Juice Robinson versus the Dogs, David Finlay and Clark Connors.
Jay White is the biggest star in this match, and this is his first major match following his return. The big lead pointed that out directly. Finlay laid White out with the Shillerlag on the Go Home show, which gives White a reason to want revenge. Bang Bang Gang wins the double chain match.
Prediction, Bang Bang Gang wins. So let's tally this up. We've got Omega retaining, Willow winning the women's title, Andrade winning the national title, Fletcher retaining the international title, Jack Perry winning the ladder match, Jericho winning the no holds barred, Cage and Cope retaining the tag titles, Death Riders beating the Young Bucks, Shida retaining the TBS title, and Bang Bang Gang winning the chain match.
That's the card. And honestly, even the matches where we're predicting the champion retains, like Omega versus Knight, the Go Home show did real work to make you believe the challenger could win. Knight standing there with both titles at the end of Dynamite was a genuinely effective image.
It's interesting because analysts at the Big Lead described Redemption as feeling like a roadblock on the way to All In at the end of August. Do you buy that framing?
Partially. The card is stacked enough that it doesn't feel like a throwaway show. But there's truth to it. A lot of the bigger stories feel like they're being saved for All In. The women's title picture with Mercedes Moné, the Don Callis family implosion, the Omega and Moxley tension. Redemption is where those stories get their next chapter, not necessarily their conclusion.
And Montreal is a first for AEW. This is the first AEW pay-per-view ever held in that city.
The Bell Center, yeah. According to Wikipedia, the Toronto Sun reported back in May that AEW was debuting this event, and tickets went on sale June 1st. It's a significant venue for a significant show, and the show is available on HBO Max for subscribers, plus Prime Video, ppv.com, and YouTube for everyone else.
So when you step back from everything that happened Wednesday night and everything that's set up for Sunday, What's the thread that ties it all together?
Trust. Every major storyline going into Redemption is about trust breaking down. The Don Callis family is fracturing. Knight and Fletcher shoved each other. Okada cost Fletcher a match. Omega, Moxley, and Osprey won together, but couldn't even get through the celebration without a brawl. Cope and Cage got ambushed backstage. Thekla cheap-shotted Willow during a face-to-face. Every single story is about someone getting stabbed in the back or being on the verge of it.
And that's actually a really smart theme for a show called Redemption. Everyone is either seeking it or about to need it.
Exactly. And the Go Home show earned that theme. Every segment built towards something. The grades across the board: A+ for the opener, A for the Thekla and Willow segment, A for Jay White, A+ for the women's tag title match, A for the main event. That's a remarkable consistency for a television show that had to set up 10 pay-per-view matches.
Here's what this really comes down to. AEW went into Montreal having done the work. The Go Home show from Nashville wasn't just hype, it was actual storytelling. Knight looks like a genuine threat to Omega. Willow looks like she's finally getting her moment. The Don Callis family looks like it's one bad night away from completely imploding.
And the Montreal setting adds a layer that you can't manufacture. That city has a history of wrestling moments that nobody saw coming. Whether AEW leans into that or not, the audience is going to be thinking about it.
So here's where we land. 10 matches, a go-home show that delivered across the board, and a pay-per-view that is genuinely unpredictable in at least 3 or 4 of those matches. Willow versus Thekla could go either way. The Don Callis family drama could blow up in any direction. And Kevin Knight standing there with both titles at the end of Dynamite is the kind of image that makes you actually wonder, what if?